It is 7 p.m. and I'm going to call this evening's Town Board regularly scheduled meeting to order. First item of business is a roll call.
Mayor Christy Melendez.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Miles Baker. Cindy Showerman.
Here.
Ken Bennett.
Here.
Paul Rennemeyer.
Here.
Ivan Adams.
Here.
Mr. Rennemeyer, will you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The third item this evening is review of agenda by the board and addition of items of new business to the agenda for consideration by the board. Are there any additions or new items? If not, I would seek a motion.
Madam Mayor, I move to approve the agenda as presented.
Second?
Motion on the floor from Mr. Rennemeyer and a second from Ms. Sharman, approving the agenda as presented. All in favor vote yes, opposed no. And the agenda is approved unanimously. Moving on to item 4, board liaison reports. Town Board Member Showerman, Water and Sewer Board, Clearview Library Board.
The Water and Sewer Board had a special meeting last Wednesday morning to look at the water rate study, and we will be seeing that at our next work session, and the Clearview Library Board will be meeting this Thursday evening.
Okay. Town Board Member Bennett, Planning Commission and Windsor Housing Authority.
Windsor Housing Authority met last Tuesday afternoon. I missed that meeting. We were interviewing board candidates or town manager candidates. Planning Commission met last Wednesday evening and they reviewed the site plans that are on our agendas tonight for East Point and for Good Samaritan.
Okay. Town Board Member Rennemeyer, Historic Preservation Commission, Great Western Trail Authority, and Windsor Chamber of Commerce.
There is no update from the Historic Preservation Commission or the Great Western Trail Authority, as neither one have met since our previous meeting. The Chamber of Commerce meeting was also canceled this month due to it being during the week of spring break and due to lack of attendance by all the members.
Okay. Town Board Member Adams, Tree Board, and Poudre River Trail Corridor Board.
The Poudre River Trail Board meets next Thursday, April 5th, and so I don't have anything to report on that one. And as far as the Tree Board, they changed their meeting from the 27th to the 20th, which was the night that we were meeting the candidates and also the manager candidates. But anyway, I did go over to the main park where they were having their meeting. We've had a lot of trees donated by various groups in the community, and so they were looking at the main park to try to decide where they're going to plant those trees. It was kind of interesting to walk around with them for a few minutes before I went to the other meeting. But that's all I have to mention.
Okay. And I have the Downtown Development Authority and North Front Range MPO. North Front Range MPO doesn't meet again until the first week in April. However, Downtown Development Authority did meet on March 21st. Just some of the highlights of that meeting, excuse me, included we finalized the wayfinding RFP and hope to get that sent out shortly to find out who is interested and also the costs of a formal wayfinding study for the group. We reestablished the parking committee and are looking at some of the parking on the south side of Main Street and what kinds of things we could perhaps offer to some of those public entities there to be able to extend parking in off hours for parking there during events and evening programming and all of that kind of thing. We looked at some things with the website and are going to be adding some things to the website and newsletter and making some social media changes. And then most importantly, I'm sure at some point, perhaps this will even be a joint session because we've already completed the crosswalk criteria and adopted And of course, the DDA is looking at ways and hoping to find some solutions to the crosswalk at Fifth and Main Street to make safer accessibility for folks trying to cross in the downtown area, as well as Fourth and Main. So they're going to take a look at the crosswalk criteria that we studied and adopted, and then take a look to see what next steps. They might want to perhaps look at adopting, and I'm sure it will be a matter of bringing it to this board's attention as to how we might partner or work together on something. So that concludes my report for the Downtown Development Authority. Moving on to item 5. Item 5 is our public invited to be heard. This is for individuals wishing to participate on a non-agenda item. Is there anybody this evening who wished to come before the board to speak on a non-agenda item? Okay, seeing none, we will move on to item B of our agenda this evening, which is the consent calendar. The consent calendar this evening consists of 3 items. Is there any discussion or adoption from the board?
Madam Mayor, I move to approve the consent calendar as presented.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion on the floor from Mr. Redemeyer and a second from Mr. Adams, adopting the consent calendar as presented. All in favor vote yes, opposed no. And the consent calendar is adopted as presented. Moving on to item C, board action. Our first item this evening is going to be presented by Mr. Lucas, and it concerns outside agency funding request from the Humane Society of Weld County. Mr. Lucas.
Thank you, Mayor and Board. Kind of stole my thunder there. So before you tonight is an outside agency request from the Weld County Humane Society. They've reserved Boardwalk Park for June 23rd for a 5K race called Paws and Sneakers. And the applicant is here tonight. Jen Bardet is the event coordinator. She'll be asking for a $350 reimbursement. If you choose to reimburse the Humane Society of Weld County the $350, that will leave you a remaining balance of $70,787 in your outside agency funding account. So with that, I will turn the mic over to Ms. Bardet.
Hello. As he said, my name's Jen Bardet. I'm the event coordinator at the Humane Society. So we are in our 30th year of hosting this 5K, Paws and Sneakers. All of the money that we raise for it benefits the thousands of animals that we take in every year. Last year we adopted out over 2,200 animals. So that's a pretty huge accomplishment because we haven't done over 2,000 animals since 2006. So we, it would be held on the 23rd, and we have 6 sponsors right now lined up with one of you guys if you choose to approve it as well. But we would really appreciate any of your consideration, and I thank you for your time.
Do you have room for a bird?
I think he just got trapped in the light. But yes, plenty of birds. We do take in a lot of birds every year. I think this year we've
You have
had,
room for one more.
right? It always blows my mind when people bring them in as strays because, as you can see, they're pretty difficult to catch, and I don't know how people accomplish that. But yeah, we've had about 50 birds brought into us this year, so we definitely have room for some more. So.
Seriously, as I understand, you have already paid the 2 fees, and you're asking for a reimbursement, is that correct?
That's correct.
Yes.
Is this a first annual?
No, it's our 30th annual. So this is the 30th year we will be doing it. In the past, we've always done it in Greeley at Twin Rivers Park. We've always been looking for like a new facility to do it at, and I think in the previous years they haven't come to Windsor because they thought maybe it would have been out of their budget, but no one's really asked any questions. I personally love the lake. I think it's an awesome place to do it. Last year we had it on June 3rd around Twin Rivers Park, and it was more of like a 5K through the neighborhood. And the weekend after Memorial Day, on a Saturday, trash gets pushed back. So it ended up everyone was dodging trash cans. Yeah, so I had brought up that we this year tried doing it at Windsor Lake, and the board was on board with me, and so we're really excited to have it there this year. And we've actually generated, I mean, a substantially amount of more of interest this year already than we have in previous years.
Okay. Other questions or comments? Okay.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I feel that it's a very good cause, and we do have the money in our budget, and so I would certainly support it.
Okay.
I do too.
Does this have to be presented in a motion or just a general acceptance?
I'm comfortable doing it either way, but just for the record, for the benefit of the minutes, let's entertain a motion.
Okay. Ivan, do you want to make that
Yes,
a
I
motion?
would
then?
move that we endorse this particular fundraiser and
Reimburse
that's
the
it.
$350.
Reimburse the $350.
Okay.
Second.
Ken, that was a second. Okay. If there's no further discussion, all in favor vote yes and opposed no. And it passes unanimously.
Awesome. Thank you
and good
guys
luck
so
with
much.
your
We
event.
appreciate it.
Okay. Item 2, outside agency funding request, Walk MS Windsor, and again, Mr. Lucas.
Thank you, Mayor and Board. Tonight, you have a second outside agency funding request from Walk MS. They were having a walk on May 12th at Boardwalk Park, and they are here tonight to ask for a fee waiver of $1,200. If approved, that will reduce your fund balance down to $69,587. And Debbie Gavato is our area representative, and she's here to speak to you tonight.
Okay.
Thank you. I'm very grateful to have this opportunity to present a few things about the MS Society. Our walk, like Eric said, takes place on May 12th around the beautiful lake in Windsor. We've been there for several years, but I've only been with the society for a year, so this is our first opportunity to ask for this benefit. I just would like to share 3 things. First of all, what is MS? What our society does, and then where the money goes into this local community. Multiple sclerosis is an unpredictable, often disabling disease of the central nervous system that disrupts flow of information within the brain and between the brain and the body. Most are diagnosed and they're between their 20s and 50s, but sometimes children are also diagnosed. The ratio of women to men is 3 to 1. I like to look at your cell phone because most people have these and a cord. And if this is your body and this is your nervous system, we know what happens when this cord gets compromised. The signal doesn't go through back to the phone or the body. So that's kind of how MS works in a layman's term. What we do, we fund research, education, programs and services, advocacy, and provide financial assistance to our constituents. So our funding from our walk goes back to this community in various ways. We have what are called MS navigators. So a constituent can call in with any kind of issue and we connect them into their community. And that means with maybe a referral to a healthcare provider. I'm part of the Windsor Chamber, so when I meet a chiropractor or neurologist or any kind of service that might be helpful to one of our constituents, they become part of our referral base. We provide exercise programs. We work with the social services within the community. And then sometimes they determine whether someone needs financial assistance. So we've had someone call in when they couldn't work because of the disease for a while, and we've helped cover their utilities and their mortgage payments. Those are just a few of the things that we do. We also fund research, like I said. We are granting right now CSU researchers and CU Denver. And then last, we have our advocacy team. And right now, today alone we work to meet the needs of those living with MS and of how those laws might help them. And today there was a hearing on the home modification tax credit down at the State House, and that will help people improve their homes for more accessibility. Our walk in Windsor is the second largest walk in Colorado next to Denver. The walk is a community event, and sometimes this is the first connection somebody newly diagnosed has with the society. They're greeted with the warmth of the participants and the feeling that they're not alone. We do not charge a registration fee for this walk, and we invite local providers and businesses to sponsor the event. This provides a connection for those living with MS to learn about what is available to them. And then we provide our mission tent that provides them additional information and the resources within their community. The National MS Society is a group of passionate people like me who want to do something about MS now, to move towards a world free of MS. MS stops people from moving. We exist to make sure it doesn't. So thank you for your consideration.
Are there any questions or comments for this applicant?
No, Madam Mayor, I think this is a wonderful event, and I know the good things that this organization does to support MS, so I would move to approve the outside agency funding request as presented.
Second?
Okay. We have a motion on the floor from Ms. Sharman and a second for Mr. Bennett approving this applicant's request. All in favor vote yes, opposed no. And the request passes unanimously.
Thank you so much.
Item 3 is a site plan presentation for East Point subdivision, second filing, East Point Plaza Commercial Center and Building 1, Lot 1. Chris Ruff, the owner applicant. Leon McCauley, McCauley Construction, the applicant. Staff presentation from Ms. Berry. Ms. Berry.
Yes, thank you. As you said, this is for a commercial center over on 257. It's East Point subdivision and the East Point Plaza Commercial Center, and as well as the first phase, which is Building 1, Lot 1. So this is a qualified commercial site plan. It's been reviewed in accordance with Article 9 of Chapter 17 of the Municipal Code. Do you get it?
Sorry.
That's okay. Okay. I was hoping someone would get them.
I know the poor little thing's trying to fry itself on the lights.
The site is located just east of State Highway 257, just south of Main Street, again in the East Point subdivision. The subdivision is zoned general commercial, and it's surrounded by other general commercial zone property. This is a little bit busy of a site plan. I have a little clearer one in just a minute, but basically the entire site is about 5 acres. The proposal is for 5 different buildings, total of about 33,000 square feet of commercial total. 172 parking stalls, including bicycle parking, 28% landscaped area, and the plan actually includes a detention pond, which is part of the drainage system out here. This is a little bit less busy of a site plan to look at. You can see where the buildings are. The first one is Lot 1, and it will be the first phase, and then the 4 other commercial buildings, future phases. So again, Lot 1, Phase 1 is about an acre in size. It's got proposed about 53 parking spots, stalls, and bicycle parking. This phase has got 25% landscaped area. It includes a patio area with planters, a drive-through, and then it also, Phase 1 will include the access drive that comes in across the property to the Phase 1 area. Phase 1 does extend a little beyond the Lot 1 area, but the whole project and subdivision will have cross easements and shared parking amongst them, as well as shared landscaping and other infrastructure. So this is the landscape plan. This one actually is showing also additional landscaping that'll be put in for the subdivision, and then the landscaping for the current commercial plan. This is the Building 1 on Lot 1. It's about 9,000 square feet. It's a mix of stucco and brick veneer, metal awnings, and some canopies. It is 25 feet in height and has a flat roof and varied roof line. This is actually the west elevation. The landscaping is missing from this picture, but it's to clarify with the brick and the stucco. These are awnings to try to break up the mass of the building. And then the east elevation, looking into the center of the lot, and then the ones on the sides. The northern facade will have a drive-through through it. It's a corner liquor, but it'll have a drive-through for the liquor store. And this is a more artist rendering of the project. And again, here's the patio area for the Doug's Day Diner. Some of the landscaping's on here, but it's also just to show the characteristics of the building. So that is it, and if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. And the applicant is here as well.
Okay. Did the applicant want to say anything at this point, or you want to wait and see if you have any questions? Okay. Are any?
I'll entertain any questions.
Okay. Any questions or comments for the applicant?
I have a comment.
Okay, Mr. Bennett?
I know this has been a really challenging property, and I just wanted to say that I really appreciate the applicant and the staff and everyone who's been involved in this for your persistence in trying to bring this forward. I think it's going to really enhance the east side of our town.
Great.
I was trying to pull up, can you go back to the
Sure.
landscaping
West,
one?
west,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, I mean, we've seen a lot of this lately where unfortunately our key corridors are where the backs of the buildings are, which are not always the most attractive, but it looks like there's lots of landscaping back there, so that will kind of help
Yeah,
enhance
there's
that.
the landscaping along the corridor itself, and then there's another strip of landscaping for the project itself, and then the buildings start. So it's pretty thick in this area. This is the right of way, and this is the property landscaping.
Okay, and was that a requirement we made to have that double landscaping, and if so why?
Well, this one happened with the subdivision, if I recall correctly. And then when the site plan came through, they also had their landscaping requirements, so just happened to add quite a little bit wider of a buffer.
Okay. Anything else on this particular site plan? Okay. If not, thank you very much. I just know folks want to know that they can't wait for Doug's Day Diners to get here, so you have a long-awaited group waiting, okay? Moving on to item 4 is another site plan, a site plan presentation for Water Valley South, 25th filing for the Good Samaritan Society Assisted Living Facility and Memory Care Assisted Living. Greg Amble, the Evangelical Lutheran Good Samaritan Society, is the owner. Heather Scott, Boulder Associates Architects, is the authorized representative, and John Sweet of TST is the authorized representative. Ms. Berry.
Right. Again, this is another qualified commercial site plan, reviewed in accordance with Article 9 of Chapter 17 of the Municipal Code. This particular site is located at the crossroads of 7th Street and New Liberty Road. It's just north of the existing Good Samaritan independent living facility. It is zoned residential mixed use and is adjacent to other residential mixed use zoning development, including single family all the way up to the more multifamily for the independent living area. The site is about 3 acres in size. The proposal is for a 55,000 square foot building. It comes in 2 pieces, or not pieces, but 2 parts. One is a 1-story, 16-bed memory care unit, and the other is a 2-story, 40-bed assisted living area. The proposal calls for 33 parking stalls, and there's also additional parking available at the independent living facility. There is 23% landscaping, and I did want to mention that there is a retaining wall that I'll show you a little later on New Liberty Road. It's a prominent feature on the site. It's on this side to help level out the property. I do want to mention that at the Planning Commission meeting last week, we did have a parking determination made. Right now in our code, the closest thing we got to assisted living or a memory care unit was a hospital for determining parking, and this would meet that. It's 1.5 or I think it's 1 stall per 2 beds is what the requirement is for a hospital. So just to make sure that everyone was comfortable with using any kind of determination for the parking, we did talk to the Planning Commission. Good Samaritan provided some of their experience in parking including that the memory care will not have parking vehicles on site, comes with the facility type. Their experience for the assisted living was about 20% of parking on site, and that led to about 8 parking. And then they also gave us an estimate for staff turnover at the highest peak hours would be about 15 staff, even though some of those staff will be up at the independent living. So based on all those, and then that left about an excess of 10 spaces for guests. So, and they thought that, you know, the 15 staff would be not very often. So the Planning Commission did allow for the proposed parking on site. And there is also allowed parking along the private drive, Compassion Drive and Compassion Court. And then here's the landscaping plan. This is just the tree part. They have 2-part landscaping plan. The next is the shrubs. And then the building elevations. This is the west elevation, like as if you were on Compassion Court looking at northward. It's a mix of some net board and batting siding in a board fashion, but it's a little tougher, more durable material. It's got asphalt shingles. The building, again, it's 2 different heights. One is the 1-story. It's a 24-foot building with a roof feature, and you can kind of see this is a replica of the roof features on the lower portion of the building. This is a 2-story part. It's about 38 feet plus the 4-foot roof feature, and I'll show you the walkout in the other elevations. And it's got the pitched roof, as you can see. So here's looking at the corner of New Liberty, looking to the southeast from that corner, and then going around toward southward on New Liberty. You can see the part, you can kind of see the retaining wall starting here. And then if you're continuing down New Liberty southward, and then you turned around at Compassion Drive, you would see this view. And this is the 1-story portion memory care unit, and you can kind of see the 2-story here, and you can see the retaining wall in the back. And then again, we're back on Compassion Court interior. And this shows it all together. Again, the taller on the north side, and then the 1-story on the south side. And then I also add these elevations just because it kind of describe what was going with the walkout area. Again, the west elevation that you've seen, the north elevation. And then here, this east elevation shows you the retaining wall. It starts low and then gets a little taller. The tallest it gets to about 12 feet, and that is under the 1-story portion, which helps minimize the actual vertical feel of the elevation. And then the 1-story memory care area. And the applicant's representative is here, and if you wouldn't mind, she'd like to describe some of her reasoning behind the architecture choices.
Hi there, I'm Heather Scott with Boulder Associates Architects. I wanted to just briefly speak to you all a little bit about what generated some of the form of the building, as well as sort of our approach at treating some of our mechanical enclosure. We really sort of started with some of the agrarian forms of architecture that we saw in the area, and wanted to tie that back to the building as well as we could, to sort of have this building feel as if it belongs of a place. And so ultimately what we landed on was sort of an approach of a modern farmhouse, and you'll see some of these forms here repeat themselves in the architecture of the building. And what we were actually doing there, as you could see from the site plan that Melissa presented earlier, we're really in a configuration here on this site where every elevation of the building is really sort of the front of the building, and we didn't have an opportunity where you have in a lot of other site configurations to sort of have a back of house to screen all of that mechanical equipment and enclosures. And we wanted to be sensitive to that from 7th Avenue, as well as our neighbors to the east. Well, really our neighbors on all 4 sides of the building. And so part of what you're seeing here with these rooftop elements tying back to the precedent forms that we pulled from, the center enclosure here is housing one of the mechanical units for the building that's serving the assisted living portion of the facility. The other two are screening all of our mechanical ventilation exhaust vents. We really tried to keep the roof line as clean and as residential feeling as we possibly could. And so that was one of the approaches that we took to that. What you don't see here off to the side is a small roof well. You can see it a little more in this elevation here, screening some additional mechanical enclosures. Melissa spoke a little bit to the site wall configuration that we've got here. Wanted to mention that one of the things that we've done in trying to minimize that, we've got about 10 or 11 feet of fall from one side of the site to the other, and we're trying to tie into existing grade on the high side, on the 7th Avenue side of the property. So one of the things that we've done is tried to tier that wall. We've exposed some of the foundation on the east side of the building and sort of split the difference between exposed elevation on the building. Poor guy.
Sorry, everyone's
I feel so bad for the poor guy. So we've sort of tried to split the impact of that site wall as much as we could. So what you're not seeing fully represented here is all of the landscaping, but the intention here is that we would have as much vertical landscape planting as we could along the base of that wall, and then we've sort of graded up against that to try and reduce the visual impact of that wall as well. We're also screening all of our trash and generator enclosure in the back there, tried to tie that as much as we could into sort of making that wall an architectural element and tying in, screening as much of our back of the house utility work as we possibly could. So that's a little bit what was driving some of the form and the architecture, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Okay, any questions or comments for this applicant? Mr. Adams?
Cindy, go ahead, Cindy.
Oh, okay, Ms. Sharman.
With that retaining wall, I think what Ms. Berry said was that the highest point it was gonna be 12 feet. Is there going to be some sort of railing or something as a safety precaution?
Yes.
So you don't have
Yep, there will
residents-
be at the top of the wall. The highest point is actually we've tied the screen wall for the generator enclosure and the trash enclosure into that retaining wall. So the highest point that she's talking about is actually the screen wall. So we've got all of our sort of mechanical yard behind
Oh,
that,
gotcha.
so that
Okay.
you're not seeing, dumpsters and all of the sort of more
Necessary
unpleasant
evils?
elements of the building, but necessary elements. So the highest point is actually at that 12. The retaining wall steps on either side of that, but we will have a retaining, or a guardrail running along the length of that wall until it gets down lower.
Okay, Mr. Adams?
I know that one of the concerns that we had in the original independent building were elevators. And so can you talk a little bit about how often there are going to be elevators for these people in the two-story particularly?
Yes, so this facility has 2 elevators, one at the main entry. Let me take you back here. So this is the main entry to the 2-story assisted living facility. There's an elevator, it's just a 2-stop elevator, pretty simple. At that main lobby, we've got an additional, we've got one additional elevator sort of in the northern third of the building to reduce necessity of traveling all the way down.
I'm sorry, would you say that?
Oh, absolutely.
I was finishing jumping back here.
So yes, we've got one elevator at the main entry and one elevator at the secondary entry, which is sort of dividing the 2 northern thirds of the building.
Okay, so that has been looked at. And then I know this is a site presentation, but I'm just wondering if those at home and all of you understand the difference between the independent living, the assisted living, and the memory care. And I just want, because our director is here, and he could talk about it if you want to. And I just wonder if people at home were wondering why, 2 more segments of this building might be. And I had the same question, but I've wanted it since the day it opened, so.
Well, actually, I was gonna say that I think that this serves a great need, because we know we have a aging senior population, and we have seniors all the time coming to Coffee with the Mayor, requesting and looking for additional senior housing options.
Absolutely.
And so I think this adds to that portfolio and gives additional options for our seniors as they continue in their way, as they go through their journey of life and go from us, you know, living alone to assisted living needs to other needs in the community. So.
Exactly, yes, yep.
Mr. Vandermeer?
I don't know what you call the development between the independent living and the assisted living facility that we're talking about here. There's the townhouses complex. How are those coming along? I've only seen like one or two. Are they fully sold out, or are they?
You
I
know,
don't know. I was just curious how that part of the development is coming along.
I might ask John to join us briefly and give us.
I'm just trying to get you up there, John.
Yes, so there's 2 twin homes there currently, and we built those just to sort of test that product, and we were going to continue on with those, but really the need right now is for this next building, and then the plan would be to come back after this building's complete and then fill in the remaining area with more of the twin homes. So.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Bennett.
This came up at the Planning Commission, a question I think was very well answered, but I just want the board to hear it in the community.
Sure.
On special events like Thanksgiving, parking for families and guests, the plan for that?
Yes, so there are some opportunities for overflow parking. Compassion Drive is a private drive, and so the intention here is that sort of split between the existing parking at the existing independent living facility, and then sort of overflow parking availability along Compassion Drive. We feel like that'll be more than sufficient.
Good plan.
Okay, anything else? Mine is more clarification probably from some of our planners, because I can't recall this, but both of these and all these other site plans have lots of landscaping in them. And I know in my last water leaders class, we had somebody who came and presented to make sure that our recent plans and, you know, our comp plan does take into account the need to do maybe more xeriscaping, use less water. And is our current plan adopted along those lines, taking all of that into account?
So correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you're referring to the update to the code that we're trying to do that would include that. Right now, it's still in the works, and it's a
Okay.
little delayed than we thought it would be, but it's still in the works to include that. But currently, this one is under our existing
Okay.
land use code.
So
And
these folks
landscaping
that we
standards.
currently are seeing are falling under our existing code and maybe not subject to some new changes that might be coming with the new that we will be seeing, or are we entertaining some of those new nuances now as we're looking at the current site plans?
Yeah, we don't have anything that prevents someone from proposing xeriscape principles now. What we'll do with the code update is implement some incentives to encourage that type of thing, but we don't require turf grass or high water landscapes. The tree and landscape standards that are adopted today do allow for xeriscape principles. So I'm sure that we're incorporating some drought tolerant species in all landscapes. So.
And I would imagine this code update's gonna even have more of emphasis on that as it kind of looks to what future needs are and know our water situation, among other things.
Yeah, like I said, it'll probably encourage xeriscape and drought tolerant species, and it will also probably provide some incentives along those lines. So.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you for the presentation. Moving on to item 5, resolution number 2018-32. A resolution approving the waiver of certain building permit fees related to Weld RE4 School District improvements to existing schools in the town of Windsor. Legislative action, Mr. Balstead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is the item that was discussed at work session tonight, and as we discussed, the school board's preparing to, or the school district is preparing to submit 9 different building permits to the town for review of interior remodels of Windsor schools. And so rather than going through the state's fee or the state's building permit process for their inspections and plan reviews, they would prefer to go through the town's process. So as a means of trying to make the fees match what the state would charge, the town staff and Safe Built proposed these two different scenarios to more or less match the fees that the state would charge. And in the case of the scenario that received the consensus at the work session was to charge the $39,138.65, which is actually just a little bit less than what the fees at the state level would be. So with that, staff is recommending that the town board approve Resolution 2018-32, and staff will work with the finance department on the paper trail, so to speak, to track the waiver of those fees.
Okay. Are there any questions or comments concerning this resolution?
Madam Mayor,
Yes, Mr. Adams.
I would move that we approve resolution number 2018-32.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion on the floor from Mr. Adams and a second from Mr. Redemeyer approving resolution number 2018-32. All in favor vote yes, opposed no. And the motion passes
Thank you.
unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to item 6. Resolution number 2018-33. A resolution appointing Shane Hale to serve as the town manager for the town of Windsor pursuant to Article 8 of the Windsor Home Rule Charter and approving an employment agreement in association therewith. Legislative action, Mr. McCarter.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Town board members, before you tonight is a resolution that carries out the requirements of the charter for appointment of the town manager to fill the vacancy left by Mr. Arnold's departure. The employment agreement that is part of your packet materials was authorized first to me from Drew Gorgay, and then ultimately in consultation with all of you. This agreement was presented to Mr. Hale. Mr. Hale has indicated his willingness to accept these terms. And so what I'm asking of you tonight is to adopt the resolution appointing Shane as your next town manager and approving the terms of the employment agreement. You're all familiar with it. If I need to recite any of its portions, let me know. But in general, the terms of the agreement have been approved by you, are consistent with practices in this industry, and represent a new relationship with a new manager for the town of Windsor.
Questions or comments for Mr. McCarter? I would just like to give my thanks to my fellow town board members, to town staff, especially Ms. Garcia and Mr. McCarter, but many other staff members, and many folks in the community who participated and helped us make this decision and get to this point. I know specifically the board, as well as many of the staff, put in extra long hours, spent lots of extra time helping us go through this process, go through this search. In the end, we had 4 great candidates, I think, to choose from. But in the end, of course, Mr. Hale rose to the top, and so we happily have his appointment here this evening, and got through this process from January to March, so in about 4 months' time. But it would not have been able to happen without all of your due diligence, participation, and your help. So I'd like to thank all of you who were involved in that process to get us that far. And if there are no further comments or questions, I would seek a motion.
Madam Mayor, I move to approve resolution number 2018-33.
Second?
Okay, I have a motion on the floor for Mr. Redemeyer and a second for Mr. Adams, approving resolution number 2018-33. All in favor vote yes, opposed no. And the resolution passes unanimously. Item 7, a community development report. Mr. Balstead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is the March edition of the Community Development Report. Projects under review, these are some of the highlights from the report that's in your packet. The report in the packet is more comprehensive of all of the projects that staff is working on. But you saw the East Point Plaza tonight. I believe you've seen Burger King already, and the Good Samaritan Assisted Living was on tonight's agenda as well, Arby's as well. Projects under construction, we've got the South Hill 6 filing multifamily project up at the 7th and Crossroads roundabout that is just beginning. We've got the Highland Meadows Golf Course 12th filing that continues to add units. And then there's a lot of activity out around the Crossroads and Fairgrounds intersection with Fuzzy's Tacos breaking ground. The Brand's Liquor next door to that is going up, and Marriott Spring Hill Suites is the tall building in the middle picture there as they're moving right along. And then also Dutch Brothers Coffee on Main Street. Infrastructure, if you've been up on New Liberty Road, just through the Rain Dance project, there's a lot of activity on the infrastructure going in on Rain Dance Subdivision 2nd filing. We're currently also reviewing the 3rd filing. And then the Ridge at Harmony Road up north has infrastructure just getting underway on the 2nd filing. And then East Point was where the retail plaza was earlier tonight. That's the top picture. So residential building permit activities is still strong. Through the first 2 months of this year, we've already issued 67 building permits for new homes. Most of those being at the Ridge at Harmony Road, but also strong in other areas. So this is the comparison to past years of where we're at this time of, after 2 months. We're in 3rd place all time compared to the last 2 years, which were the top 2. So just since 2016, we've had our record year in some category. Residential multifamily, as I just mentioned, we've broke the record of residential for multifamily projects or multifamily units that became available last year, and those continue to be strong as well. A couple of the new entries on this bullet list are the Grasslands Park 2nd filing apartments, townhomes. Those are just north of the railroad tracks on the west side of 7th Street, and then also added to the multifamily projects pending the Chimney Park 4th filing. So we've got projects that are continuing through the process and new ones adding to the list. So as you can see, compared to the last 2 or 3 years, last year was a record year for multifamily, and we're already ahead of that pace of last year. Tracking residential lots just because of the large number of building permits, just keeping track of where that inventory stands. And for the past several years, it has stood between 500 and 800 lots available at any given time. And at the end of this past February, 688 permit-ready lots were available. And this just shows a historic, you can see from 2010, coming out of the downturn where we had a larger inventory, it's now kind of hovering in that 500 to 700 range. So this slide really shows how much Severance is growing right now. So of all the regional neighbors, Severance has 145 single-family home permits issued in the first 2 months of this year. We're in 2nd place, which is the first time we've not been in the lead in quite a while. And then multifamily building permits comparison from the region. We're in the same ballpark as Fort Collins and Loveland at this point in the year. So that's the report for first 2 months of 2018. Do you have any questions or?
Any questions for Mr. Felstad?
A lot of
Nice job.
activity.
Good report, Scott.
Thanks.
Yeah. The only thing is, can I get a copy of the full report? We only had, we didn't have all these pieces in our packet, all these slides.
Yeah,
I just would like a copy. I get sometimes these questions at coffee with the mayor, and these
Sure.
numbers are good numbers for me to have at my fingertips, so.
Sure. The report that's in your packet is the complete information, and this is just intended to be a highlight reel,
Okay.
essentially, for tonight's meeting. So I can certainly get this to you, but for complete information, you'll want to use this report that's in your packet. So,
Okay,
all right.
thank you very much.
Thanks.
Okay. Moving on to item D, communications. Communications from our town attorney.
Nothing further from me.
Okay, communications from town staff. Mr. Ballstead, anything further? Mr. Moyer? Ms. Holdling? Or Mrs. Holdling? Mr. Wagner? Chief? Okay. Communications from acting town manager, Ms. Garcia.
No communications, thank you.
Okay. Communication from town board members. Okay. Seeing none, we have item E this evening, an executive session.
Madam Mayor, I move that we move into executive session pursuant to Colorado Revised Statute 24-6-402, subsection 4, subsection E, subsection L, for the purpose of determining positions relative to matters that may be subject to negotiations, developing strategy for negotiations, and instructing negotiators with respect to water treatment terms, with Mr. McCarter and Mr. Wagner.
Second?
We have a motion on the floor from Mr. Rennemeyer and a second from Ms. Sharman to move into executive session. All in favor vote yes, opposed no. And we will move into executive session. So going to